It is 5 o'clock, and I want to say, first of all, thank you for being bonus people, for coming and being a part of this particular session. I always struggled how to title this because sometimes as we get older, we get a little sensitive about the terminology, and none of us want to be the old people. I can remember my great-grandmother, she actually resided in a nursing home, but with some issues mentally or whatever, she would say, I don't want to go down that nursing home with those old people, and she was 88, 89, I forget. So this is not particularly about age, though it does have quite a bit to do with how we manage or transition some certain things. So I've entitled it Stewardship in the Sunset Years. Sunset is Cindy and I's favorite time a lot of days. A lot of days we get to walk and see the beauty of the sunset and see the clouds and things of that nature. And so as we think about life and about how life ultimately moves, there are opportunities and things that we have that are unique at every stage of life. There are things that are different. We were not put here on this earth to be permanent. And so as we think about some things, you may be able to make personal application. You may be able to make application to friends or to family, older or younger. Here's my game plan in this afternoon. It'll be a little less formal than our worship service has been this morning and will be tonight. And if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be glad to entertain them. I would love to tell you my train of thought is so concise that if you get me the slightest bit off, I won't be able to continue, but my wife would tell you my train runs on a lot of tracks. So feel free to ask any questions that you have. And also, I'm going to try to reserve a little bit of time at the end. If you have questions at the end, I'll be glad to take those. And then I'm going to give you some contact information on the screen at the very end, that if you have other questions later on, you want to pick up the phone and give me a call, or there are questions more of a personal nature, be happy to deal with those as well. God wants us, we've been talking about stewardship today, He wants us to be good stewards of our time, of our talents, and our abilities, our money. And when we think about the sunset years or the years later on in life, they offer some unique opportunities and challenges. I am a half full person. Is the glass half empty or is it half full? Mine's always at least half full. I try to see everything in the most optimistic way possible, and my guess is I'm with a lot of half full people here tonight. You want to learn more, you want to know more, you want to do more. And so as we think about opportunities and challenge, the sunset years may provide opportunities to do things in greater quantity than we've been able to do in the past, because there may not be necessarily the work obligations or the time obligations there were before. We may have more opportunity to pray. We may have more opportunity to study. I realize that we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours a day, but there are certain areas in our life that time or some of that time is more controlled and more committed than others. So there may be more time for us to be able to pray. There may be more opportunity for us to teach. I've known a number of people that have the ability, the desire, and once there was less commitment from a work standpoint, they were able to spend a lot more time in teaching, either Bible class, evangelism, number of different other ways. More opportunity and courage. I mentioned this morning, Barnabas is just one of my favorite Bible characters. Do you know anyone that doesn't appreciate encouragement? I've never met that person. I've seen a few that would kind of act like they didn't, but every one of us appreciate and are benefited by encouragement, and every one of us have the opportunity to encourage others. Of all the elders that I served under over the years, one of, if not my favorite, had a saying, and I can't even begin to recall how many times he would sit in my office and in conversation this would come up about encouragement, and he would make this statement: everybody needs a pat on the back every now and then. And that's true. That's true. Makes me feel good, makes you feel good, makes others feel good. There may be more opportunities to be encouraging, more opportunities to serve and to serve in different ways. We may say because of certain conditions, well, if I had more time or if I had more uncommitted time, I'd like to serve in this way. And I've seen people that as things transpired in the years, they were able to serve in different ways and grasp that and just embraced the ability to serve, more opportunity to influence. If ever our world need positive influences, more salt, more light, more cities set on the hill. So sometimes the sunset years offer that. But they also may provide challenges that we didn't have before. Health. I'm not telling you anything that is new or news when I say if we live long enough, our health will decrease. There'll be issues that we didn't have in all likelihood before. And dealing with that health and long-term care issues and how do I deal with Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all of those things. So health may provide a challenge. Transportation. It may become, or there may become a time when we're no longer able to transport ourselves as we did in the past. Or you may be dealing with family members or parents or other people that has become a challenge and become an issue. Housing. We all want to stay where we want to stay as long as we possibly can. But if you kind of connect number 3 and number 1, it becomes needful sometimes for us to have a change or to make a change in where we're staying. We may move from independent living to assisted living or to nursing homes or things of that nature. And the challenge of housing may present itself in our life. Finances. It's different in the sunset years. Very often, most often, we're not making the money. We're not earning the money that we made in other times in life. And so it's very important to be able to have A, set aside money for that time, and B, be good managers, be good stewards over money during that period of time. If there are expenses that are unusual in their nature, long-term care expenses and others, how do we deal with that? How do we take care of that? So the ability to serve, it may be that we can't serve in the same ways that we served in times past in our life. And for some people, that really becomes a struggle mentally and a challenge that I can't do what I used to do. And that may well be true, and we look for ways that we can do other things and serve in other ways. Here's some areas of concern as we get to that point or are in that stage of sunset living. Will I outlive my money? What if I outlive my money? People are living longer today, and the fact that the doctors and the medical technology is able to keep us alive longer, the quantity of life often increases, but the quality may not keep up. And so that's a concern. It's a real concern sometimes for people. What if I live past my money? Do I need a financial advisor? How do I navigate all of the different things that are in our world today financially? And for a lot of people, the answer to the second question is I do need somebody. I need somebody to help me make wise and prudent decisions, because there are many and there are a lot of things that if we make bad choices, it can have a significant impact upon our lives, and it also can impact the lives of our heirs, of our children, our grandchildren, and things of that nature. So where am I going to look to? Where am I going to seek advice in that realm? It's gotten a lot more complicated financially in the last decade or so, the last generation or so, than it used to be. So there are important decisions that we need people to lean on. Do I need an attorney? Now this is not interact need a check deal, but do I need someone to help me in regards to wills, advanced medical directives, powers of attorney, things of that nature? In a lot of cases, the answer to that is yes, because again, the complication of the legal system and being able to both take care of our current needs and then also end-of-life needs. Wise advisors, prudent, competent advisors are also really helpful. What are the best and safest investments? Well, what do I do? How do I best invest my money? And yet, how do I take care of that in such a way that if something happens, my investments that were at risk, what happens then? Where's the balance in that situation? Do I need long-term care insurance? Most people know and realize that the greatest danger to our financial well-being in the sunset years is an extended long-term care experience. Nursing homes pretty much statewide average about $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year. It doesn't take very long to eat into resources at that pace and at that rate. Alzheimer's, people that contract Alzheimer's, the average Alzheimer's stay in a facility is somewhere around 8.6 years. So you start doing the math and you realize, wow, that could really become a financial issue. So how do I take care of that? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. How much money can I give away with no tax consequences? Should I give my money away? Who should I give my money to? How much money can I give away per year? Or do I need to give away? What are the tax consequences involved? What if I go into a nursing home? What happens then? Who pays for that? Who takes care of that? And basically, to address at least a part of that question, initially, nursing home care is to be paid out of our resources. There are really only three ways to pay for nursing home care. It's self-funded or out of our own resources. We can have insurance that may pay some or all, or Medicaid ultimately pays for nursing home care. Medicaid's not to be confused with Medicare. Medicare is what pretty much every person gets at age 65, some sooner based on certain conditions. But Medicaid and Medicare are two separate things. In order to qualify for Medicaid for long-term care expenses, basically you have to spend down all of your money, and basically it's an impoverishment program. So that's kind of the last resource we ultimately want to try to use in that sense. What if I contract Alzheimer's? Who's going to take care of me? Where are they going to take care of me? How are they going to take care of me? Who's going to pay for that? And what system is ultimately going to be in place for that? Do I need life insurance? What do I need life insurance for? How much do I need? Do I need any at this stage in life? What about debt? And what about other things? Do I need a power of attorney? Do I need something to be able to direct someone to have the ability to make decisions for me should I become temporarily or permanently mentally incompetent? Do I need a living will? Living wills often referred to now as advanced medical directives. Should there be end-of-life choices? Do I need something that's going to give my family, to give doctors directives in regard to that? Should I deed my house to my children? Sometimes people say, well, here's how I'm going to avoid that nursing home thing. I'm just going to give away everything I've got, and then if I have to go in the nursing home, there won't be anything for them to get. That's not always, and matter of fact, rarely is that the best or a really good solution for a couple reasons. One, if you go ahead and give your house, your property to your children, they get whatever basis you have in it, which often is low, and so if they sell that at some point in time, maybe even after your passing, they may have a significant capital gain that takes place there. A second thought process in that is there is a 60-month, a 5-year look-back period before you can qualify for Medicaid. And whatever assets you give away in that 5-year period prior to applying for Medicaid is, for lack of a better term, held against you and may keep you from being able even to get those benefits because of things that you've given away. So a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening ultimately flows back together. That goes back, do I need an advisor? Do I need an attorney? Do I need someone to help me make good decisions other than that person you might have saw at Walmart or the beauty shop or somewhere else that I had this situation where this happened, here's what I did. They may be well-meaning and may be right, but often a professional is really helpful in that. Title designations. How do you have your assets titled? Is it single? Is it a joint account? I'll give you a really quick story about reasons, again, for making good preparations. Where we lived, where I preached some years ago, we had a gentleman after we had moved that called me and said, you know, I want you to come and I want to talk to you about a will and some things of that nature. And I said, sure, be glad to come and talk to you. I'm not an attorney, I don't write wills, but I told him I'd be happy to help him, gave him the name of a Christian brother who is an attorney. I actually brought that brother with me, and so we talked to him. And so he had some very specific things he wanted, and so we did exactly what he asked for, and we asked some other questions, but he really didn't want to share that information. And we said, okay, that's fine, we're just trying to be of assistance to you. His wife at the time had Alzheimer's. Well, he passed away before she did, which was a little bit surprising. When he passed away, pretty much everything, they had a couple grown children, but that wasn't a really good situation. So everything they had was in his name and or her name. Well, as you can probably think a little bit ahead of me, with Alzheimer's, she wasn't mentally competent. And so it took, going before the judge, took a number of weeks. She required 24-hour care 7 days a week just to be able to get to the assets that they had. There was plenty of money, plenty of assets, but we weren't able to get to them, to access them, until after we were able to get in front of a judge, which took quite a period of time. And so whose asset is this name in? Is it and it may be a car, it may be an account, a financial account. And versus or. What does that mean? If you've got and on an account versus or, well, and generally speaking requires both parties to be able to do any action with an asset. Or means either one of those can act in that particular situation. A lot of property is titled joint with right of survivorship, and that, generally speaking, is a good thing, assuming no other special circumstances. That means it belongs to both parties, and with the passing of one, the other survivor becomes then the full owner of that property. Payable upon death. Sometimes you may see the initials POD. If there's an account, it can be a bank account where two people are on it, or only one person or whatever is on it, and you can sign a form that designates this as payable upon death, which means as soon as the death certificate is available, that money can be transferred to whoever you ultimately pick or whoever you ultimately choose. You say, well, what value is that? Why does that make any difference? What that does is that bypasses all of the probate, the 6 month waiting period, all of those kinds of things. Get money to whoever you want to get that money to quick. Transfer from death pretty much the same thing. Only those would be something that would be involved investment accounts of that nature. It does exactly the same thing. It's just a different title or a different designation. Beneficiary designations. IRAs, annuities, other things require life insurance, require beneficiaries. And you can list a primary, and you can also list a contingent if you choose, in case that primary person or persons are not living at the time. It's important to go back and make sure. Sometimes people have done those designations years ago, and the people that are on it may not necessarily be the people that they want now, or maybe there were minor children, or there were other issues. I'll back up to that one for just a second. It's not technically a beneficiary designation, but with wills. Who did you want, where did you want assets to go, and is that current and is that updated? Areas to address, and that's kind of a good place to kind of transition there. Wills. Every person that's of legal age needs a will. If you don't have one that you've made, the state of Alabama has one they've made for you, and I can promise you, you don't want necessarily them to be taken care of. Well, I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't have a lot of money. Doesn't matter. They're expensive. Well, that's kind of a misnomer because generally speaking, they're not if they're simple wills. But being able to direct, every person needs a will. If you're a husband, if you're a wife, you can't have a joint will. The will is an individual will. Now, you may have reciprocal wills that say, okay, I want everything to go to my wife or I want everything to go to my husband. But every person needs a will and needs to update it or at least have it reviewed fairly regularly. Don't let more than 8-10 years go by without having it reviewed. And if you have changes in your life, someone passes away or things of that nature, you may need to have it updated more than that. Let me share an example of why it's important to update a will. I had a lady call me last week, and I had made a presentation a few months ago at a congregation to kind of a seniors group, a young at heart group, and had presented some of this stuff we're talking about tonight. And she said, "Can I come let you look at my will?" I said, "Sure, come on." So she came and she showed me her will. She has 6 siblings, but only 2 of the siblings are now living. In her will, it divided everything 7 ways between her 6 siblings and the church. Now she only has 2 of the siblings that are living. One of them's in a nursing home along with her husband. And I said, okay, so do you really want everything to still go in this same direction? I said, this will doesn't even tell what happens to the siblings that are passed. It doesn't talk about does it go per stirpes. It doesn't talk about does it go to the spouse. It doesn't even address that. So now some judge is going to have to be unwinding all of that kind of stuff. And she was like, well, no, not really. I've got 12 nieces and nephews. And I said, well, do you want them to have part of your estate? What do you want to have done here? And she had some works of the church that she wanted to receive money. So ultimately, again, I said this and I want to repeat it. I'm not an attorney and I try not to do their work. But ultimately, I directed her to an attorney who is a member of the church. And what she's now going to do, she has 1 brother living that's not in the nursing home. She has 12 nieces and nephews, one of which is special needs that they'll need to take care of some things there. And then she has 4 areas of the church work that she wants her estate to go to. So the brother's going to get 1/3, the nieces and nephews are going to get 1/3, and then 4 works of the Lord's church are going to get 1/3 of her estate. Now, had she done nothing to her will, it wouldn't have happened that way. And it would have been a big mess. And so if you don't have one, get one. If you hadn't updated it or at least reviewed it lately, I encourage you to do that. Power of attorney. Every person needs a power of attorney. Should you become temporarily incompetent mentally, someone needs the power. And you can grant the specific or the general powers however you want to. Someone needs the power to be able to act upon your behalf. If not, there are a number of things that could need taking care of that nobody has the power to do. Ultimately, somebody would have to go to before a judge, get the judge to declare who they want to be that power of attorney, which may or may not be you, and then there's quite a bit of time that generally speaking transpires there. So it's relatively simple to get a power of attorney. You can make it a springing power of attorney. You can be as specific or general as to what things. It may just be one specific thing that they can do, or you may say, I grant that person the ability to do anything that would need to be done in my situation, depending on your trust of them. Advanced medical directive, kind of think about living will there. What do you want to happen? If you get in a situation where the doctor says, we can do no more, you're not conscious, do you want a feeding tube? Do you not want a feeding tube? Do you want to be kept alive? How do you want to be kept alive? What do you want? And on the decisions go. And I encourage people, don't put that burden on your family. Don't put that burden on the doctor. If you know, let those folks know with an advanced medical directive. What normally happens with the people that I work with, our attorneys or the attorneys I generally work with, will bundle all 3 of those together. They'll do a will, a power of attorney, and they'll do an advanced medical directive. Generally speaking, for less than $1,000. I don't know what the legal field is here, what the cost is here, but $500–600, generally speaking, will get all of those for a couple in in the area that I normally work in. Funeral and burial plan. If you know what you want to transpire, one of the greatest blessings you can give to the family is go ahead and write that down. Let them know what your wishes are, and it's easy then to carry those out. Document organization. If something were to happen to you today, if you were to get hit by the proverbial bus and someone was needing to come in behind you and start taking care of things, would that be a maze? Or would that be something that there would be an envelope or a document or some place where basically someone could just follow the trail of what you have, how things need to transpire? Some of the biggest nightmares families have dealt with have been in trying to figure out, well, I didn't know they had an account here. I didn't know they had an account there. I didn't know they had this. I didn't know they had that. I didn't know about this bill. I didn't know about that bill. And so doing some documentation or document organization to be able, so if something were to happen, then someone would be able to easily find those things and go forward. Long-term care plan, what are you going to do? How are you going to take care of that? Where do you want to be taken care of? Who do you want to take care of you? At least have a plan in mind, and that obviously would include, do I need some form of long-term care insurance? We don't have time in a single session tonight to talk about that. Be happy to talk to you about different ways. There's a new format out, I say new, it's 4, 5, 6 years old now, of ways that people secure this insurance that wasn't available not that long ago. That's a lot more appealing to people than the older system. A lot of change have been made with that. Gifting plan, we talked a little bit about that this morning. What, excuse me, what do I want to give? When do I want to give? Who do I want to give it to? Putting those things in place. And that's kind of, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we did this in Bible class this morning, but just wanted to kind of remind us of the areas there that you can gift, different ways to gift. Again, get some counsel, get some professional advice. When's the best time? How's the best time? I'll pick on trust just for a moment. You can set up a trust where you get income off of it and the charity gets it at the end of your life. You can set up trust where the charity gets the income off of it and your heirs get it at the end of your life. There are a lot of different ways to do these things, and there are a lot of people that are competent to be able to help you. But have a plan. It may be that you could bless the church in a marvelous way during life or after life, at death. There's a lot of different things that can be done. So I encourage people, have a plan, have a gifting plan. Maybe some people say, I want to give while I'm alive so I can see the fruit and see the benefit. That's wonderful. Some people say, you know, with that long-term care and with other things, I'm not sure exactly how much I'm going to need, so I'm a little bit cautious about doing something that's irrevocable, and I understand that, and have a plan at death. But that just at least hopefully encourages us to know that there are some things out there and to know how to be creative, for a lack of better term, to be effective in doing that. I mentioned this morning, people sometimes have property or land or houses or stock that's appreciated greatly, and if you sell it, even with lower capital gains rates, you have to pay capital gains on it. But if you direct it, or if you set it up where it goes directly to a 501c3, a charity that's recognized, then you pay no taxes and you get the full benefit of the fair market value of the gift at the time. And so those are some things that are probably not as well known, or at least not as well publicized as other things. Most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And what I found in working in this arena for some period of time is we have a lot of good people in the church that want to help and that want to do good and that want to be good stewards. It's just, where do you go to find that information? It's rarely ever apathy, but more often than not, it's the point of I just didn't really know where to go. I really didn't know where to turn. I didn't know that particular thing was available. those are some contact numbers. You're free to write them down. If you want to give me a call, there's no charge for an initial consultation just to talk to you. I'm not selling anything. I have the privilege where I work of being able to help people in these arenas and in these areas. So you're more than happy to, to give me a call if you got a specific area or specific question. I don't pretend to know all the answers, but I do have contact with a lot of very qualified professionals that can get an answer for you. We've got some time left. What questions do you have? Maybe things that might have been generated by our discussion this evening. What questions do you have? Yes, sir.
Think of Alabama. So you have several pieces of property, you only have partners in these business ventures.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do the financing on the property that you're purchasing, when you sign up on the notes, it's just you, even though you're married.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does that affect your spouse? The state?
Okay.
What if her name is not on those deeds?
If her name is not on those deeds or not on those notes per se? Okay. A couple factors would go into play into that. Number one, normally what you see when you see a will in the very first paragraph is that I wish all my debts, first of all and foremost, to be paid for out of the estate. Normally, when you have partnerships and things of that nature, wise counsel would say, okay, we'd do two things. Number one, you're going to make provision for the debt. Okay, if something happens to me, where's the money going to come from there? Is it going to be securities? Is it going to be stock? Is it going to be whatever in regard to that? Normally what that is either in a partnership or some other situations, it's a buy-sell agreement. And you have some kind of operating agreement, that says, okay, here's what's going to happen in that situation. And what you would do is you would have some plan for that, because one of the reasons for probate is, are there any outstanding debts, or does anybody have any claims against the estate? And so that's that 6-month period where people go and do that. So I encourage people in that situation to go ahead and have some game plan for how they're going to pay that debt. If I owe my partners X or whatever, we're going to have some kind of buy-sell agreement. We're going to have some kind of arrangement that says, okay, here's how the debt's going to be paid. What about my percent of ownership if it's just a partnership, or if it's an S corporation or something like that? What are we going to do? Does my spouse become the partner? Do we have life insurance that covers that? Several different options to say what we want to do in regards to how the partnership ultimately changes hands at that point in time. Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. A safe place to put money for retirement.
Moving it from one retirement area that may not be secure. What would be a good place?
Okay. That's a great question, and we talked a little bit about investing before. So the big question in regards to investments is always this: what is the appropriate relationship between risk and return? And generically, it works this way: the higher the risk, the higher potentially what? The gain, the return. And younger in life, we're more willing to take more risk, because if you go back and have another 2009, or if you have another correction in the market, you've got time to kind of pick up and choose and make up for that and things of that nature. And oh, by the way, oftentimes if folks don't go crazy, the market will eventually pick itself back up in a shorter period of time than we anticipate. But in moving, you're always wanting to look at, okay, the older I get, the closer I get to retirement, I want to lessen the risk. If that ultimately fits in my retirement plan, I want to lessen the risk because I can't take as much up and down as I could before. So you may have, in a 401k or some other plan, you may have an investment that's 70% stock and 30% bonds. Okay, that's fairly risky. That's fairly aggressive. But as you're moving it, you may decide, okay, as I get older, I want to go down to 60-40 or 50-50, or I may want to go 60% stocks, 40% bonds, 60% bonds, 40% stock, 70% bonds, 30% stock, something in that nature, and all of that ties into a financial plan. Okay, so how much money am I going to need when I retire? What investments do I have currently? And what rate of return do I need on those investments? And then what investments do I have to ultimately produce that rate of return? So it's impossible to give a specific number or an amount, but just generally speaking, the closer you get to retirement, you're wanting to ramp down the risk in order to be able to overcome some things that transpire or could transpire in down years and things of that nature. Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? Always makes me wonder, did I do that good a job, or did I confuse it so bad that people don't even know what to ask?
Can you do to keep a nursing home owning everything you own?
Repeat that question.
What can you do to keep a nursing home from owning everything you own?
Okay. Let me repeat the question. What can you do to keep the nursing home from owning or getting everything you own? The nursing home doesn't want your property. The state of Alabama doesn't want your property. The only thing that the nursing home wants is payment for their services. And again, it gets confusing based on intent to some degree. How insurance works. Medicare, once you get past 65, covers the great majority of your health insurance needs. Most people will come in then on top of that. It covers about 80% and get a supplemental plan, and then they'll get a supplemental drug plan. And depending on what kind you get, that'll end up covering 98, 99, 100%, depending on what you choose. Long-term care, nursing home, is not considered health insurance. That's not considered taking care of medical issues, even though it does have to do with health. So Medicare is outside of that. Now, there are some occasions where if you go into the hospital, Medicare will pay up to 21 days depending on rehab and things of that. But your extended stay is not covered by Medicare. It's not covered by anything else. So they're going to ask you to pay for it. And you say, well, okay, I've got this amount of money. I got this amount of cash. I got this amount of savings. And they say, okay, you're welcome to pay it out of those savings. Then you say, well, okay, that's all I got now, except I've got some property here. I've got whatever. It's going to depend. What you can keep is going to depend on whether you're single or whether you're married. If you are single, you may have to sell your house in order to pay for your care. If you are married, they're going to allow your spouse to keep the home. They're going to allow the spouse to keep X amount of income. They're going to allow the spouse to keep an automobile. And it's what's called a spend-down provision, S-P-E-N-D. They're going to say you're going to need to spend down until you get to this level of money before Medicaid is going to go in and pick up. And that's the reason long-term care insurance has gotten to be very important to a lot of people, because what that long-term care insurance can do, it can go in and pay some part, all of that expense. Now, the downside to long-term care insurance is, guess what? It's what? It's expensive. That's the word I heard in common there. But $6,000 a month is pretty expensive as well. and particularly as that grows at about 4% a year. I want to mention just a couple, and I'm not really trying to get away from your question. I just want to kind of bring those two together. I want to mention a couple different ways that people can get long-term care insurance. One of them is what's called traditional long-term care. Works just like your automobile insurance. If you use it, use it. You pay premiums monthly, quarterly, annually. Some have paid lump sum premiums. But if you don't use it, if you pay for your car insurance for 6 months and you don't use it, it's gone. Now, I realize there's a company or two out there that messes up my illustration by saying we've got this deal that gives you money back if you didn't have an accident and things like that. But generally speaking, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so a lot of people say, hey, here's 2 reasons I don't have long-term care insurance. Number 1, it's really expensive. And number 2, if I don't use it, I'll lose it. And I could add a third one to say the opportunity for it to go up is pretty significant because they can change the rates at pretty much any time they want. They have to go through state guarantee funds, but that's pretty much a rubber stamp in the state of Alabama. The second kind of long-term care insurance that's a lot more popular now is called asset-based long-term care insurance. And what happens there is you pay a single premium, and it has 3 factors to it, several other things that qualify for long-term care. If you need those things, it'll pay what it says it'll pay, and you'll get the benefit of it. May be ultimately in your best interest, but keep in mind when if you give your house, I'll just use an example, if you give your house to your child or to your children, let's say you paid $150,000 now, you sell it for $150,000, they pay 0 capital gains. So there's a sword, there's a 2-edged sword with 3 years before you.
The fact that you have blessed us so richly, and we thank you for, we know that all
beyond the sky.
Not a single person has ever said, I just regret serving the proverb. Call it being so impressed in preparation. In all things, and blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands